Everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to show you something very interesting that every organization is looking for. How do I prevent my sensitive data being processed by the Copilot? So the main question is like my users are started using Copilot heavily. How do I ensure that the sensitive data stays protected in my organization? And the good news is like all these capabilities are available in the Purview ecosystem itself, and you can integrate this and make sure that your sensitive data is not being processed in the Copilot. The question might already come into your mind like why this matters, because Copilot is powerful. It is increasing the productivity of the users. It can summarize, rewrite, generate content using my own organization data. Yeah, but that also means that the sensitive files can be referenced in prompts, and also the confidential content can be transformed or regenerated, and there is high possibility, let's say your marketing team can share a sensitive information that's not supposed to be shared. So the challenge begins is like as a result of this, the data, the sensitive data, there is a possibility that sensitive data can move very fastly than the before the traditional DLP can react. So that's the reason, like it's a co-pilot agent processing. The users might not even realize that they are exposing the sensitive information. And by the way, this is like today we are focusing only on the co-pilot, and of course we can expand this beyond the other Azure Foundry agents, because that is also an option for the integration with the co-pilot. Integration with the Purview for the Azure agents, but we'll take a look at that in a different video. So we always need to make sure that the Copilot respects the same data boundaries, like how it is configured for the humans, and that's the way it should be set up for your Copilot to protect your sensitive data. So you can use this entire protection by using the Microsoft Purview, and let's take a look at it. And also, I wanted to tell you one classic scenario, like for example, your marketing team wants to like for an example, a marketing team wants to do a financial forecast about the upcoming months. uh, there is a high possibility that they might process sensitive information that is being present in the customer data set or an internal strategy. So usually the marketing team, they use Copilot to summarize it, they extract the insights or rewrite for a nice marketing email. So the main goal for every organization is to ensure that your data, the sensitive data, is being protected with the Copilot interactions, and make sure it's not being processed. So here we are going to take a look at the options that we have in the Microsoft Purview and see how it can be beneficial for us. So the first and the foremost thing is like you need to have the required roles. I'm not going to talk more about it. You need to have the Purview administrators, or the compliance administrators at least, for it to configure over here. And the first and the foremost thing is you need to come into the sensitivity labels and create a new label. So in my case, like I've created a separate and a dedicated test sensitive label for testing, because my first and the foremost thing is please do not go directly into the production, and also do not touch your default sensitivity label. For example, you have a sensitivity label created for confidential or highly confidential. Don't play around with that. Create a separate sensitivity label for Copilot. Integrate with the Copilot and see how it is behaving, and later you can eventually apply the confidential and highly confidential sensitivity labels for the Copilot interactions. So in this case, like I've created a label called Copilot restricted with the display name Copilot restricted, priority, description, and a color. And the next part, where should I apply it? The files and other data assets, emails and meetings. You also have an option to configure the privacy access controls and other settings to protect labeled teams. But I'm not touching this right now. Just I wanted to show how it is working for the files and the other data sets. And the next part is like, how do you choose the protection settings? There are two options. The first one is control, who can access and view the labeled items, and second one, apply the content marking. I see these both adds a lot of value, especially the content marking. adds custom headers and footers and watermarks to the label items that helps the end users to realize that these are sensitive documents and must not be processed in the Copilot. I'm going to show that in the next few seconds. So the access controls, you have the assigns permissions or how the users could decide, and also the content expiry. Yeah, I've just set simply 100 days, but for this one it's not required, but just I have set it, and also it is applicable for the authenticated users. And here you have option dynamic watermarking and double key encryption. I don't suggest to touch these two. Just go with the default watermarking, see how it is benefiting, and then later you can play around with these extra features. Going next, you see the content marking. This is what I talked about. It's going to add a real value. So when you turned on the content marking, you have an option to add a watermark. So here you have a customized test, Copilot restricted, and add a header. So in this add a header, you have the option of mentioning a text which is the Copilot restricted, and a footer which is like do not share Copilot processing prohibited. I will show you how it is in reality in the next few minutes. The next part is like auto labeling for files and emails. I suggest don't start with auto labeling immediately. The moment when your labels, this selected labels for the Copilot is working fine, and later you can turn on the auto label. And the next part is like these are the protection settings for the groups and sites if you have selected. So for example, for the external sharing, if you select this, then the conditional access policy can be enforced to block the sharing. So these options are there, but we are not going to touch this. And next part, this is the review, and we are going to save this. Since I have done this already, I'm not going to save it again. And here the next part is like once you create the sensitive labels, all you need to do is just publish the label. So here, like I just come here and publish the label. There is also a very new option which is like policy sync status preview that helps you a lot in knowing like if your policy is completely synced. That's going to help the admins a lot. Okay. After you do this, creating a sensitivity label, publishing the label, the next step is you need to create a DLP policy, associated DLP policy. So here, this is the DLP policy which I have created. I'm just going to go back and show you from the beginning. So this is the name I have created, block Copilot processing for Copilot restricted, and also I've given a description. I'm not going to add any admin units because it's just a demo tenant. I wanted to show you a demo, so it's not applicable for me. And where you need to apply the policy. So here we are choosing Exchange, email, SharePoint, sites, OneDrive account, and devices. So these are the place. And the next one, customize the advanced DLP rules. Here what you need to do is you need to select the appropriate label that we created for the Copilot. So in our case, like the sensitivity label that we created is the name is called Copilot restricted. So we have selected the Copilot restricted label match, and the condition is like content contains any of the sensitive info types other than its physical address. I've just simply selected and content contains any of the sensitive labels, confidential data, and evaluate predicate for message or attachment. So these are the conditions I have added, and actions audit and send alerts to administrator. So these are things, but you can always modify the DLP rules based on your requirement. So once you do this, the policy is ready. So like for example, in my case it's a manual policy, so I've just come to the Word document and I've created a policy. I've just created an executive summary with some like confidential information that could be triggered based on this document, and also manually selected and label this policy as Copilot restricted. The moment when I do this, you see the information that's showing up here. Do not allow Copilot or external AI processing, restrict sharing, and require encryption. So this is the default message that users would get, like when they go to the label, and that's giving them an awareness. It should not be basically, uploaded in the Copilot. And also all the way to the bottom, you also see, the footer watermark that we enable, do not share Copilot processing prohibited. So this kind of small information is definitely going to help your organization and the end users to make sure that the Copilot data is not being the sensitive data is not being processed in the Copilot. So let me show you a demo. And also one disclaimer, I don't have the full Copilot license, so you might not see the complete error message. But what happens, like when I try to upload it, this particular document, executive summary, which is labeled and also protected with the Microsoft Purview label policies and the data loss prevention. So the moment when I upload it, it gives me a message. It looks like the file uploaded couldn't be processed because it contains invalid or unreadable content. The reason being why is because the Copilot would not be able to process any encrypted document or a labeled file. So in our case, like we have a sensitive information, like we have the SIT enabled DLP, the label enabled file. So that's the reason it is not able to process it, and hence your sensitive data is protected. So this is one of the simple method that you can use, just labeling your critical sensitive information, and then when someone is trying to process it in the Copilot, definitely it is not going to succeed. So to wrap up, Copilot does not weaken your security posture. It definitely amplifies the importance of having the right controls and the right guardrails in the place. So with Microsoft Purview, definitely you can achieve this by classifying the sensitive data, enforcing the right DLP policies, and monitor and investigate the risky behaviors that is being executed on the Copilot side. And also, the last but not the least, you can also protect the data before, during, and after the Copilot utilization. So, and the best part is, like everything today, you can do this with the Microsoft Purview, which is also present in the Microsoft ecosystem. So, it is not going to be more complex. Hope this video helps, and you can start thinking of implementing the guardrails and protecting your sensitive data by being processed in the Copilot. And see you in the next video.